Good morning, happy Friday everyone. Today I wanted to talk to you about parenting after separation. When I did have a think about what I'd like to share with you with this particular topic, essentially we can summarize it and save everyone's time and just say don't do anything stupid or vindictive or nasty. But let's break that down into something more specific. So when you've separated and your property's been dealt with, you've got the second component, the more important component, which is children. The thing with your parenting needs, they're not your needs, they're your children's needs. So let's work a bit backwards from it. Your parenting plan will depend on your children. So the most helpful way of navigating parenting after separation is work from the children backwards. And what I mean by that is reflect on what your children's needs are and then reverse engineer that. So let's look at some different case studies. So if you've got a family that has split up and the children are under the age of 2, or they're newborn and the child is still being breastfed. So in that particular case, the need of the child is going to be obviously to be with the primary carer. So when I say primary carer, it could be that the father's a stay-at-home parent and the mother is out working full-time, or it's the other way around, the father's working full-time and it's the mother that's staying at home and feeding the child. So in a case like that, even though the parents have separated and they don't live together anymore, it wouldn't be, the child's need is that it is being cared for and fed. So if the child is being breastfed and the father can't do that for reasons of the mother not being able to express milk, or there's no arrangements, or they live too far apart and it's not practical, then an arrangement that allows for like a shared care arrangement of a week on, a week off is not going to be practical for the parents. So in a case like that, if you think outside the box and you both should spend time with the child, and it is in the child's best interest to have both parents. So in a case like that, if you think, all right, the child needs to be cared for by a parent and fed by a parent, and it's very hands-on, and the child can't be removed from their primary residence, then is it a possibility for the other parent to be allowed to visit during the week, or spend a couple of hours, or come over and spend time on the weekend and be allowed to maybe burp the child afterwards, or hold the child, or stay with the child until the child falls asleep, or is there when the child wakes up. If, for example, however, you've got teenagers or children that are in, let's say in high school, so anything from year 7 onwards. We had a case where we had teenage children, and one parent lived in Victoria and the other person lived on the border of Victoria and New South Wales. So in order for the children to spend time with the other parent, they would have to travel on the train for about 5 hours each way. So whilst the parents got along and they agreed to the children spending every weekend with the other parent, it's not practical. So in order for that to actually happen, if you look at it from a teenager's point of view, if you're going to school Monday to Friday and you've only got the weekend, is it ideal for a child to be on the train Saturday morning for 5 hours, get to the other parent by mid to late afternoon, spend an overnight, and then spend another 5 hours the next day going? So in that particular case, whilst it was, the parents agreed that yep, it's great, you can have spend time, it wasn't practical for the children. Then we had another matter where the distance wasn't an issue, the parents did get along. And when I say get along, I don't mean that, you know, it's necessarily kumbaya and you all are, you know, in the circle of friendship, but there's no overt family violence. There's no risk to the children. So in a different matter where the children lived in a small regional town, they literally lived in the same street. So the children were of an age where they could travel to school themselves, come home themselves, and they were able to decide on an ad hoc basis where they wanted to spend the night. So they literally had, you know, their rooms at mum and dad's, and they had, you know, it was seamless. So they could go to school, and it didn't matter to them whether they went home to mum's place or to dad's place. So again, this was what worked for the children, and because the children could do it and they wanted to do it and it suited them to do it, that's the parents sort of worked around it. So have a look, reverse engineer what your children's needs are, and then go from there. One of the other things that you do need to take into account is what are the children's routines. So if, you know, we're not talking newborn children, we've got children who, you know, they've got a life of their own. They either belong to sporting teams, swimming teams, AFL teams, or they have got, they're in primary school and they've got a very close relationship with their friends, with the community. What ties do the children already have? So if you look at the ties that they already have and you want to change them, what you need to have a look at, or what you ought to look at, is how flexible these routines are. So sporting seasons, they're flexible only to the extent that you've got seasons and you don't. So, you know, if it's something like swimming, it's all year round, or if it's AFL, there's particular times for each sport. So if that is not flexible, then it follows suit that you are not going to be able to change your arrangements because their routines are not flexible. There's something that's called a child's cultural ties. So if your child has got a cultural, you know, tie, translated, for example, the children could be Aboriginal or Asian or Indian, and they've got a community with elders and grandparents that, you know, they're the only ones that can actually teach them or expose them to their culture. If that is in one place and removing them is going to take that away from them or minimize their exposure to their culture, you should factor that into their parenting plan as well. One of the things that the courts look at when, you know, say for example, if there's consent orders, the courts will ask or they want to visit this question: what is the practicality on the children of them spending a significant or substantial amount of time with each parent? So this is going back to my initial comments about what the needs of the children are. So if you are living, for example, 5 hours apart from each other, certain things are not going to be practical. So have a look at that as well. One of the other things that parents tend to forget is that children are raised by a village, so it's not just about them. It's going to be about the children's the child's other relationships, like with their grandparents or their other friends. Whilst the parents can broker a arrangement where they both get to spend a certain amount of time with the child, don't forget that you could also have grandparents that also want to spend a certain amount of time with their grandchildren, or they've got, you know, childhood friends that they want to spend some time with. If you start fighting about, well, whose time is that going to come out of? again, you're taking the focus away from what's in the best interest of the child. You're not reverse engineering it. If it means that it is, say the grandparent wants to spend time with the children, try and incorporate, either if you have a good relationship with the grandparent, incorporate it into your time, or, share it equally. The other thing that you should factor into your parenting plans is the cost and the availability of after and before school care. So whilst your children are at school, depending on where you work and what time you have to leave for work, you might have to put the children in before and after school care. You'll need to consider the cost of that as well. So if that is going to be something that you can sustain, you'll have to factor that into your parenting plan. More often than not, if you cannot afford the before and after school care and you have got a parent that is willing to and wanting to spend time with the children and is available to spend time with the children, then maybe that parent can pick up the child from school, and that before and after school care can be with that other parent. Finally, you've got things like it's called parental responsibility. So in parental responsibility, you've got all of the big issues. In your parenting plan, have a think about, you do need to have a think about all your big issues. For example, religion, healthcare, vaccinations, sports, all of these things that you both need to have a say in. You need to factor that into your parenting plan as well. So say for example, we had one case where the mother had very strong views about rugby, in that she was adamant that her child was not going to play the sport because the father and grandfather, they'd all sustained injuries in this sport, and she was adamant that no, their child was not going to play that particular sport. So they had these discussions, and the child didn't play rugby. Anecdotal, the child played cricket and got an injury playing cricket. So there you go. These are all of the things that you should factor into your parenting plan after separation. So, what is good for the children, reverse engineer the needs of the children, have a care for other things like their other relationships, what your financial commitments are, what your personal beliefs are. That's all what we call the logistics of a parenting plan, and they can be worked out or they can be negotiated by solicitors. If you are amicable, you can come to an agreement about a parenting plan with yourselves, or if things are very healthy, then your arrangements can be fluid. What is going to bring you towards what I call a fluid parenting plan? And a fluid parenting plan is just code for a healthy parenting plan, and a healthy parenting plan is one that is reverse engineered from your child's needs to what you can do for the child. What's going to bring you to that point is if you can do or not do certain things. So let's talk about that. One of the things that you can do is you can give your child assurances that they are loved. And unfortunately, when you do separate, I'm not a psychologist, but there's a lot of research about children having introspective thoughts and questioning whether the separation of their parents has got anything to do with them. So give them those assurances that that they are loved, and this is not about them, and it's about you. Be seen by the children as accepting the separation and dealing with it. So children take their cues not from what we tell them, they get their cues from what they see us doing. So if we are seen as being, being flustered or emotional about it or aggressive about it, they will take our nuances on board, whether consciously or subconsciously. It's just what children do. Allow your children to discuss their feelings in a safe space. So that is with them, so you with them, or if they need to talk about their feelings to a counsellor or to a health professional, allow them to do that. Keep open communications with your children. So what I mean by that is, and I've said this in one of my other articles, is that your left hand must know what the right hand is doing. That is essentially you've got a child and you've got two parents, and in between, in the middle of that or beside that, you've got things like their sporting clubs or their schools and whatnot. If all of these different arms all have one thing in common, they have the child's welfare. That is that's their common thread. So if you all talk to each other, then the child's welfare will be good. For example, if the school doesn't know what is going on at home and the child is acting out at school, or if the child is not coping at school or is distracted at school, if the school is unaware of what's happening at home, they won't be able to navigate it. If, for example, one parent has got work commitments, and if this is not communicated until the very last minute and this changes parenting arrangements, then that's not going to work either, in that one parent's not going to be able to change their plans at the very last minute. Things like weddings. So your best friend or your aunt or your mother or someone's getting married and the wedding is overseas or in a different state. You're going to have to communicate this so that you can start making arrangements for the child to go to a special event with you. If you communicate these things, then you will be able to achieve what you're trying to. If you don't communicate it, well, how can you achieve something that the other person is not aware of? The other thing that I would just like to point out is that there are lots of resources available. So the Department of Social Services have got some publications on their website. So if you choose to go on familyrelationships.gov.au, you can follow some links to articles to help you with parenting issues after separation. So just to recap, with parenting after separation, be respectful, be communicative, and reverse engineer. Always reverse engineer from the child's needs to yours. If you are respectful towards each other and to the children, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to parent even though you are parenting from two different households. Parenting is difficult even when it is in one household. There is absolutely no reason why one should think that parenting will be any easier when you're doing it, essentially as a single parent. And it's not easy for your children as well. It's difficult for children dealing with parents. It's even more difficult for them dealing with parents, two sets of parents in two different houses under different environments. So communicate and be respectful. If you've got any other questions with regards to parenting after separation, or you need assistance with brokering a parenting plan, you can have mediation done with Relationships Australia, or if mediation is unsuccessful and you'd like our advice on it, please feel free to contact us for an appointment in any one of our offices. Well, happy Friday, and I hope you all have a good weekend.